Hello and welcome back to day 5 of the Drinks by the Dram Whisky Advent Calendar. So, starting to flesh out the leaderboard up there now. I still haven't checked to see whether you can actually read that from there. You probably can't. But anyway, in top position we've got Glenrothes 12yo, which has been a favourite of mine for a long time. And I decided to put that slightly ahead of the Aerolite Lindsay 10-year-old from Master of Malt. And behind that, probably a little bit of a way behind that, we've got the Darkness 8-year-old, which is another Master of Malt product. And then bringing up the rear, we have the Glenrothes 12-year-old, which is not a bad whisky, but it is in last place at the moment. It's good, this, isn't it? It's just like Top Gear, but with less racism, hopefully. Anyway, so December the 5th, let's see what we've got today. Glenrothes. So this is another Speyside. So we don't actually know where the Darkness is from, but it is heavily sherried. Bunnahabhain, heavily sherried. Benriach is a Speyside, obviously sherry wood, heavily sherried whisky. And now we've got another heavily sherried whisky. But, a little bit worryingly, and I knew this day would come, this is a 40% ABV whisky. It is Glenrothes 12-year-old Soleo collection. So I've had Glenrothes whiskies before, and I think every Glenrothes I've ever had has been pretty heavily sherried. They are that classic Speyside style, but they all tend to be pretty good. Some of the younger whiskies are kind of average, but once you get into the mid to upper price range, they all tend to be really, really nice sherry matured whiskies. This one in particular, the Soleo collection, I have not had that before and I have not heard of it. I would guess that it's probably in a rather entry level bottling, being at 40% ABV. But anyway, let's get in there and see what we've got. So let's give it the obligatory bottle sniff, the first test. Definitely sherried. And I'm getting a bit of waxiness there, but there might be a reason for that, because each of these little sample bottles are sealed with wax. So let's get it in the glass. I must say that I've been really pleasantly surprised with all of these, to be honest. I think each of these that we've had so far, even though some of them are ones that I'm really familiar with, they've all exceeded my expectations, including the Bunnahabhain 12, which I just plain forgot how amazing it is. So this one may be the first disappointment. 40% ABV, and I didn't get a big hit of aromas on the nose when I cracked that one open like I have on a lot of the others. Here we go. It's actually not too bad. It is on the mild side, but it is 40%. I'm guessing and hoping that this is going to be probably the cheapest whiskey that we've had so far. I hope it is, but that's definitely not bad. So traditional sherry notes. Like I was talking about with the Darkness 8-year-old, there's that worry that when something is cask finished that it's just going to be flavour dipped, that you get a substandard whiskey and you dump it in a cask that's literally wet, swilling around with sherry, and it's cheating a little bit really. Some of these distilleries, the extents that they go to, they're essentially adding sherry to the whiskey to improve the flavour profile. But I don't think that's what you've got here, even though it is cheap and it is mild. I'm getting some proper sherry notes out of this, but also some bourbon notes as well. I don't think this has been wholly sherry matured, or possibly some sherry hogsheads in there, so casks that have been treated with sherry but they're actually made up of reassembled staves from bourbon casks. That's something that happens quite a lot, and this bourbon sweetness combined with the sherry notes makes you think that maybe they've done that, because it's a hell of a lot cheaper to reassemble some bourbon casks and treat them with sherry than it is to track down and transport genuine sherry casks. You also get generally a much more accessible, sweeter whiskey from a sherry hogshead made of bourbon casks, because it gets a lot more of that sweetness. You don't get the overly woody, bitter, spicy notes that you can get from some proper, genuine European oak sherry casks. Despite being mild, it's actually quite interesting. Getting some proper traditional sherry notes, not too dissimilar in some ways to the Darkness 8-year-old. Some sort of candied fruit peel, Christmas cake, nutty, orangey, all of those things. But also, you're getting some sweetness from the bourbon cask, some caramel, vanilla, honey. But there's also a really interesting note on the nose of this one that's a little bit like gunpowder, a little bit of a sulphury note. So sulphur can absolutely trash a whiskey, it can ruin it completely. But a little bit of sulphur, a lot of people, myself included, would argue that it can actually accentuate a whiskey, and it can be quite pleasant. Also getting a nice note of raisins on the nose as well. So overall, like I said, I'm hoping this is a very affordable whiskey. It's mild and meek in pretty much every way, but it's pleasant enough. Let's see how it tastes. Mild. So, weak and watery. Not unpleasant. And this does reinforce what I said before, that although this is going to be a sherry matured or finished whiskey, I think that they've either put a large percentage of bourbon casks into this, or they're sherry treated American oak casks, because you're getting quite a lot of the flavour that is there is a fairly stereotypical bourbon sweetness. You're getting lots of vanilla, caramel and honey, although saying that, it's all fairly mild. It's weak, is what I'm saying. Also getting some mild grape notes and a little bit of a mild maltiness. The maltiness towards the end of the palate is actually one of the highlights of this whiskey. It actually turns what could be a really drab whiskey into something that's inoffensive, but if I was given this as a gift, I'd be very grateful and I'd enjoy it, but I would never buy this. So I think we talked that one up. This is the first disappointment of the calendar so far. As for the finish, it's really all about that mild maltiness that you get on the end of the palate. That's about all you get. The finish dies off really quickly, it's really mild, and as I predicted, there was going to be a few whiskies in here that I was going to crap all over because of the low ABV, and this is the first of those. 40% ABV. I think this would have been not phenomenal, but it would have been much better if it was bottled at 43 or higher. Let's just do a little bit of online research, see if I can find any details about exactly what this is. I must admit that I don't spend a huge amount of time checking out all of the new releases from every distillery anymore. I sort of keep tabs on the distilleries that I really like. Everything else, I kind of get round to trying it when I get round to it. 40%, there is a 10-year-old version of this as well. This, the 12-year-old version, is £40 a bottle. It's a little bit more than I expected, to be honest. So Soleo is a process of sun-drying grapes. Zooming in on the bottle, it does also say matured only in sherry-seasoned oak casks and bottled at natural colour. So natural colour, brilliant, good job there. But the fact that they say only sherry-seasoned oak casks, so there's no bourbon casks gone into there like I thought there might have been, but the fact that they're sherry-seasoned casks and not actual sherry casks makes me think that they probably are something like hogsheads assembled out of bourbon casks and then treated with sherry rather than actual sherry casks, and that does make a difference. So In the other videos so far, I have been going away and making a decision as to where I put the recently reviewed whiskey on the scoreboard. But I think this time it's a bit more cut and dried than that. Glenrothes 12yo Soleo collection. You are going behind the advent calendar, where you will never be seen again, sentenced to eternal darkness. Now I'll move that out of the way. But I wouldn't be surprised. That's definitely going to finish somewhere towards the bottom. And because of that low ABV, I wouldn't be surprised if it stays there until the end. I kind of hope it doesn't, because it's not horrendous. But I'd also be a little bit surprised if there's anything much worse than this in the advent calendar. Let me know in the comments if you think I'm completely wrong about this one and it's the best thing ever, because we've all got our opinions. Nobody's an expert in these things, really. So I look forward to hearing from you, and see you next time. Cheers.